Oh, if you would gather in your seats, we're about ready to begin.
Joe, and this other side over here where the parliamentary motions, will you take your mouse and click all rather than just reconsider?
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And if I see something...
All right. All right, if we'll gather in our seats, we're about ready to begin. If you would bow with me for a word of prayer. Most gracious God, we're grateful that we're your people for such a time as this. Help us to always reflect the best of your kingdom in our conversations with one another, in how we treat strangers, and how we greet all those who we would like to invite into the kingdom. We're grateful, Lord, that you have chosen us, and we commit ourselves and recommit ourselves to do the very best we can to reflect the best things of the kingdom. And we'll be careful when we get to the end of this journey not to pat ourselves on the back, but to give you the glory for all the good things that happen according to your will. It's in the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Move to our General Secretary for a Judicial Council ruling.
Thank you. Typically, we would not be reading these in legislative committees because you would be in 12 or 13 portions of the building and we would wait for the plenary session. But since this is not a plenary session, you are the legislative committee, we are able to read it here because you're the same set of people and no one would be left out. So we do want to make sure that we get these to you as quickly as possible so that they help you in your continued process. The Judicial Council has released Memorandum number 1376. Memorandum number 1376. Petition for declaratory decision from the General Conference concerning the constitutionality of paragraph 304.5 in light of paragraphs 16 and 33 of the Book of Discipline 2016. The digest reads, "The question raised in this matter was answered in Judicial Council Decision 1321 and the decisions cited therein." Again, the question raised in this matter was answered in Judicial Council Decision 1321 and the decisions cited therein. Thank you. This is the memorandum from the Judicial Council.
Gary, I want to introduce myself and hope that you'll do that as you come to the microphones, and remember to do it in this order. My name is Reverend Joseph Harris. I'm an elder in the Oklahoma Conference, and I am so honored that you all have chosen me for such a time as this. Some have said, "Joe, why would you do this?" I said, "Because you make yourself available to serve your church, and then God does the rest." So thank you so much for that opportunity to serve you. And I also want to thank all those who submitted their names to be in the pool. We have had meetings since Thursday, and I would have honored had to have been any of those who had been with us to have been elected to this position. They're outstanding people. They serve the church. They give great leadership. And so I am just grateful that I had the privilege to be among their company. I'd like for us to remember what Bishop Tracy Smith Malone reminded us of, that we're to be kind to one another in our conversations, to not intentionally do harm, to always strive to do good, and of course, to always stay in love with God. If we can remember those three things, we'll be okay. You know, someone said earlier that we can disagree, but we ought to disagree with gentle compassion for one another. I hope that you will forgive me for my faults at this. You know, I chair 2 legislative committees, but it's nothing like this, folks. And I want you to know that there are some things in parliamentary procedure, et cetera, that we didn't have to do in independent commissions, that some of you who have been in other committees have had to do. So I'll be relying a lot on Lynn Young, our parliamentarian, who has already given us good leadership to help us get through these items. And know that I will make mistakes. You know, I said at my ordination when I was asked if I was expected to be perfected in this life, that I expected to, but not these next 2 days. So know that I'll do the best I can, and I'll make mistakes. I'll ask your forgiveness now. I love the opportunity we had to go around and ask forgiveness for intentional and unintentional things. I ask your forgiveness now for that. But we'll go on, even in the midst of mistakes, to do the best we can for God. And I promise you, I will give you my best as we move forward. I want you to forgive me for name pronunciation. It's a challenge for me sometimes to get particularly some of the international names as clearly as I'd like, and so please correct me at any point if I mispronounce, and blame it on my head, not my heart, because you'll know that it'll be done with the best intentions in mind. Remind us again as we debate these issues to speak slowly and clearly for our interpreters, etc. I have a tendency to go fast sometimes too, so I'm going to ask them to remind me to go slow if I'm going too fast, and certainly I would remind you too. And I want to also remind you that as you put your name in the pool, that it's not when you get into the pool, it's how I look at this pool and try to make sure we're as diverse as possible with those who are speaking. So don't think because you think you're the first one to get in the pool that you'll be the first one called. It'll just be a matter of how we select people from around the room, and we'll try to do it as fairly as possible. I want us to always remember to be careful on our substitute motions, because those substitute motions constitute an action of the conference. And if a substitute is defeated, then it has been acted upon and will not return in this legislative session. So remember that, particularly if you're trying to substitute things, particularly plans, as they might be there. I want you to remember that point of orders must cite the rule, must be concise in its reasons for raising the violation. As our parliamentarian reminded us the other day, this is not a time for additional speeches. It's to say that there was a violation of the rule according to your opinion. I may have a different opinion and may judge differently, or we may throw it to the body. But those would be the reasons, and the only reasons for points of order. Our speeches for and against are under a 3-minute clock. I will be as kind as possible to make sure that we stay as close as we can to these three minutes for speeches. So it's probably good to write a 2-minute speech and expect 3 minutes when you actually talk. And so try to adhere to the 3-minute speech. Amendments and main motions open a new queue each time. So if we have an amendment, then you want to get into the pool, you can. And if you're already in the pool for the main motion, when we return to the main motion, then you have to resubmit your name in the pool. So I want people to remember that so that they don't think, well, I was in the pool and now we got back to the main motion and it seemed to drop out and nobody ever seemed to call on me. You have to resubmit those names. And again, no guarantee. I would ask each delegate to please reread page 274 to 277 on Saturday's DCA. That continues to remind me each day of how we're going to proceed in this legislative section. And please, you know, we had a day of prayer on Saturday, and it wasn't a day so we can get that out of the way and do just the business. It was time for us to say that our business is a prayer, and that we'll approach each other in prayerful consideration. So let us continue praying our way forward, and always ask God to be with us. All right? Well, let's go. The first item that we will deal with are the West Pass recommendations. They were the first that appeared in the selection of the percentages of the high priorities, and that was the highest. And we will deal with those together. They're petition 90016 and petition 90017. They're found in your ADCA on page 168 and 169. And we will assume that there's a motion to present this before the, because of our prioritization, and there's a second. And so this motion is debatable. So in a moment we will open the pool so that if you wish to speak, you may register. So if you wish to speak on either of these petitions, and remember we're voting on them together, you may register to speak now. Some are coming up now in the pool, so let me start with that. Bill Allen, microphone number 1.
Hello, I'd just like to, this is Bill Allen, Upper New York Conference. I'd like to speak in favor.
See.
Okay. I just want to say that all my interactions with Westpath have been so professional. I know they have done their homework. I know they are thinking not only about the next 6 months and the next year, but the next decade and beyond and beyond. I just want to really affirm that I believe that it's wise that we move in these directions, and I just want to affirm this.
Bill, is there a speech against? I don't see any. So I call upon Lonnie Chafin and to go to microphone number 1. And would ask for what purpose you seek to speak to the Assembly.
Thank you, Joe. Lonnie Chafin, Northern Illinois Conference. I actually have a question, and I didn't know how to, where do you want us to register questions on this device?
You did it correctly.
Oh, thank you very much. And my question was actually about the prioritization list.
Yes.
Is it possible to get a physical copy of the order in which we will address these petitions distributed to the body tonight? I did try to write it down as quickly as possible, but it would be helpful to kind of have a orderly array of how these things will be addressed.
My understanding, it will be in a DCA in the morning, but you're looking for something this evening. Is that right? So I don't know if there's any possibility of getting any copies, but it probably won't get printed tonight. So I think the best we could do is just know that it'll be in a DCA in the morning.
May I ask then just what the first 5 will be, so we can have ourselves mentally prepared for what comes? It's
Sure.
It makes us a little more prepared.
All right. Of course, West Path, which we're dealing with now.
Uh-huh.
The traditional plan, which will be next.
And both West Path petitions.
Both West Path petition we're dealing with currently.
Okay.
The traditional plan, disaffiliation Taylor, disaffiliation Boyette, one church plan, disaffiliation.
Well, we won't get all the way that far.
Okay.
I just wanted to know what we're doing now.
So,
see,
is that good?
See how I get confused. All right. West Path, and traditional plan number 3. Is that what you said?
And 2 disaffiliations.
And then a tailored disaffiliation.
And Boyette.
Boyette. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
These 2 West Paths are bundled.
Right.
Vote for 2.
And remember, the 2 West Paths that we're dealing with now are bundled. I'm looking to see if there's any speaker who would speak not in favor of the West Path. I do not see any in the pool yet.
There's some amendments.
Bonnie Martin, microphone 4, has an amendment.
Bonnie Martin, New England Conference, lay. I have an amendment I would like to try on petition, where's the number? 90016, line 3, the language or release from the trust clause pursuant to paragraph 2548, 2549. I'd like to move to strike that language
So your move is to just strike that language.
Yes, if I have a second, I'll speak to it.
Is there a second? I think I hear a second. You may proceed.
Unless there is an answer from West Path about the importance of including that option in this legislation, I would move that we consider striking it in recognition of our denominational historical trust clause, and that it not be part of this piece of this legislation.
Okay. So we have to strike. And we open this amendment up for debate. So I'm told that the only way we can amend, we can strike an amendment is to strike the words, and then they would go, the striking would go back into the main question. So do we have
If you want
the?
to strike from the amendment, we don't have anybody speaking for it. We got a new queue.
All right.
Nobody- Well, there's nobody in the queue.
So
Take the vote.
so we have no one in the queue at this point,
There's somebody.
and
There's 2.
now they're coming in.
Can you announce to have her bring a written copy of her amendment?
Yeah.
Right, yes. Please, Bonnie Martin, if you would bring a written copy of your amendment up to the table, that'll help our records. I call
Jim Allen? Yes.
Well,
You had one speech for, so.
right. We had a speech floor, so I called Jim Allen to microphone 1, and he will speak against the motion, the amendment.
Thank you. I'm Jim Allen, a lay delegate from Tennessee. 2548 and 2549 are paragraphs currently in the discipline about when churches leave. 2548 and 2549 include such routine things as just selling a building, a church that's closed because the membership have died off. They can be pretty routine. I think this proposal from Westpath gives the annual conference some real guidance on how to handle the pension funding related to that. And so I would speak against deleting those references in the proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So let's pick one of these reconsider guys over here.
Pick Brian Milford has a motion, other motion that he'll tell us what it is if he comes to microphone 4.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I, Brian Milford from the Iowa Conference. I have a question. I'm wondering how to invite the General Secretary or a representative from Westpath to speak to this amendment.
I know the General Secretary is here
Here he
because
comes. He's walking up the side.
and here comes.
He's coming.
This will need. You'll need to give us permission to do this, and so if you'll take your voting device, and if you would give us permission to allow a representative from Westpath or the General Secretary to speak to the Assembly, you would vote yes. If you are against that, you would vote no. All right.
Just it's not up yet. It's not up yet. So
It's not up yet, so we'll hold on, but you can get your voting device ready. All right. Okay. They're ready. If you would invite a speaker to come to address this, you would vote 1 would be yes. If you would not, then you would vote no. Please vote now.
people waving flags.
We have some technology flags that are being waved, so I pray that our those who take care of that are responding.
Tell us when you're ready.
All right, I'm not sure where the delay is.
Hang on while we fix these problems.
Okay. We're trying to fix some of the issues that some of the flags are going up about, so hold steady for a little bit and we'll get to this vote. Okay.
I thought maybe they'd gotten used to these machines by now.
You think so?
Then what you do is pull the card out and stick it back in. Yeah, it's fine. It looks like most of those are handled.
Okay. I think we've handled most of them. There's a flag or two still waving.
But they're saying that there are a few votes trickling in, but it's not close at all.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and call it, even if your vote might not have registered. I think you'll see the reason why. So let's show the vote. All right. You have allowed for a speaker either from Westpath or the General Secretary to come and address the Assembly on the issue before us.
Gary back there, isn't he? Gary's back in that corner, isn't he?
Oh,
Is nice Gary?
I don't know. Is the Westpath representative? Okay, the Westpath representative is at microphone 2, and please feel free to begin speaking when you're ready.
Thank you. My name is Andy Hendren. I'm General Counsel at Westpath. I work for Barbara Boisergrain, our General Secretary. In answer to the question, the Delegate Jim Allen is exactly right. The language that we're proposing to strike accommodates current situations. Paragraph 2548 actually allows church property to be deeded to a federated church or an other evangelical denomination. Paragraph 2549 deals with closing churches. The text as it's written says release from the trust clause in those circumstances. It could also be thought of as non-enforcement. It's really if the annual conference lets the church property go in those situations that a pension payment should be made.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that information. We'll return back to the amendment now, and we had a speech for and a speech against.
Got one other over here.
And we do have another, Bill Brownson, microphone number 3, and please state the reason for your inquiry.
Bill Brownson, West Ohio. Mr. Chairman, the request was for a point of information,
Okay.
not related to the amendment, but to the petition in total. I'll offer it if you're interested in hearing it now.
Wait until the amendment is finished.
Can you wait until we finish the amendment?
I
before we go back?
can. I was in the queue before the amendment came. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
We got another.
And we have another inquiry, Ian Urea La. Please forgive my pronunciation. Microphone number 1.
Thank you, Chair. It's Uriola.
Thank you.
You're forgiven. My question, I rise for a point of inquiry. My question is, if this amendment were to be approved by the body, do we have figures for what the average cost would be to the average United Methodist local church if this were to go through?
All right. I will ask the representative from Westpath to return the microphone 2 if he can answer that question.
Again, Andy Hendren. This question, I think, is about the underlying petition, not about the amendment to strike certain language. But to speak to it, the answer is that it varies. It varies from church to church. It varies from annual conference to annual conference. It depends upon how well funded the annual conference is in its defined benefit, in its pension promises, really. And then it depends on the size of the church relative to the other churches in the conference, and the financial strength of that church relative to the other local churches in the conference. So we don't have an exact number because every single church is going to be a little bit different.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. We return again to the amendment. We had a speaker for and a speaker against. Are there any more speakers? Seeing none, I sense that you're ready to vote on the amendment. The amendment is to strike the language and incorporate that strike into the main motion. And so, if you'll take your voting device, if you are in favor of the amendment, you would press 1. If you do not support the amendment, you would press 2. Please vote now. I think we've responded to all the flags that were up, so we should see a result shortly. All right. So the amendment is defeated overwhelmingly, 672 to 135. Now we return to the main motion, which is before us. The queue is empty, and as you recall, as I said earlier, you have to re-register if you want to speak either for or against the main motion. And remember, the main motion is the coupling together of the two West Path petitions that we have in front of you. So the queue is open. All right. Okay. We have several people who are asking questions, it seems, and so we'll start with Mark Holland, microphone number 1.
Thank you, Reverend Harris. Mark Holland, clergy from Great Plains. I am personally, financially, and emotionally invested in this question. I have a question about page 161. It's letter A. It's the DC plan for the future and freeze legacy plans. And this says that the General Board of Pension and Health Benefits is directed to bring to the 2020 General Conference amendments to the mandatory clergy benefits to support the decision of this General Conference, and they shall consider ways that the benefit plans can support greater freedom and flexibility to a future United Methodist Church. And it includes two things that I would ask the Westpath to speak to, because this is a $4.7 billion investment in the church, our greatest financial asset by far. And I just want to be clear, as a pastor, and my father's a retired pastor, about how these benefits are going to work. It says freezing the defined benefit components and ceasing account balance annualization. And it says securing accurate financial records, implementing new funding and liability allocation. But this is the one, creating a new mandatory retirement plan that is a defined contribution plan. So I have a number of questions about that, and I defer to you on how to best proceed.
Well, Mark, let me just say that your question is an important one, but it does not have anything to do with the motions that are before us, with the two petitions that are before us. So this would not be the proper time for us to have a conversation with Westpath about this. My suggestion is if you can find a Westpath representative and ask those questions personally.
So if I wanted to ask that, would I need to make a motion?
No motion would be in order currently.
It's not pertaining to the current.
Because it doesn't pertain to the current petitions that we're dealing with.
Well,
That's the ruling of the chair.
that doesn't.
All right.
That's not what we're voting on.
No. No, we're
But
voting.
this is the rationale of what the petitions do, and if we're doing away with this defined benefit, I would like an explanation about why we're doing away with defined benefit, and why we're recommending that come back in 2020.
But it's not what the petitions that we're currently dealing with are saying. They're not relating to that. That's another question for Westpath, but it does not deal with the petitions on 168 and 169, 90016 and 90017, which are the petitions before us. So I would rule you out of order at this time and encourage you to find Westpath representatives to answer some of the questions that you have. Okay? Thank you.
So if I asked a question off of 168, paragraph 1504, would that be in order? Because that's directly in the petition.
That would be in order.
Thank you. Again, this talks about terminated vested participants under the clergy retirement plan. Can you talk about terminated participants' accrued pensions? Because that's my concern, is that someone their pension's being terminated, and I want to understand, they're moving that to a defined contribution rather than defined benefit. I would just like an explanation from Westpath about what they mean by terminated vestment participation.
All right. If we could have the representative for Westpath come back and perhaps stay at microphone 2 for questions that we might have related to the petition that is in front of us. Now, you've given us a question related to that petition, and let's see if there's a response to that. I see the General Secretary at microphone number 2, and I turn to her for an explanation.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Boyd-Train, General Secretary of Westpath Benefits and Investments. And your question refers to if an individual terminates their annual conference relationship, then what would be the plan regarding their benefit going forward? Currently, the benefits are paid in the form of annuity, and that means that the conference has ongoing liability in order to make sure that that benefit is payable for life. Basically, if the clergy person were to terminate their relationship, we do not think it makes sense for the conference then to have ongoing liability, and therefore would consider that person terminated as they would in other corporate types of plans, and we would simply then convert that to a defined contribution plan. It wouldn't be an annuity, and that would also stop the conference's liability.
All right. Okay.
One last question to that.
Thank you.
Does that include someone
was
who's been terminated?
That's really the extent of the question, and we'll need to move on to others who have questions. We move to Ginger Gaines Sorelli, microphone number 1, and please state the nature of your inquiry. Those of you who are waving, you've got to sign into the system if you want to have an opportunity to speak.
Hello, thank
Please.
you so much. Ginger Gaines Sorelli, clergy from Baltimore, Washington, and I have a question.
All right.
I'm curious about if someone could explain it's related possibly to the question we were just hearing about, and I'm hoping that we can get further clarity. Why the defined benefit plan, if you could explain it, and why we haven't been able to pay it off yet.
All right. So the question is...
an explanation of the defined benefit plan and why we haven't been able to pay it off yet.
Okay. I'll ask Barbara if she'll respond to that question. Microphone number 2.
Barbara Boyd-Green, and the goal has not been to pay off the defined benefit plan yet. The defined benefit plan that's currently ongoing as a part of the Clergy Retirement Security Program is an ongoing benefit that's intended to continue to serve active clergy as long as they are in the plan. And so there has not been calculated a termination liability, if you will, as if the plan were terminated. We fund the plan anticipating that there will be future contributions plus earnings on those contributions, and that, in fact, the earnings will help make up the total liability. So it's intended to be ongoing as long as that makes sense for the denomination.
All right. Thank you. Explanation. I move now to Joe Kilpatrick, microphone number 2. Here he comes.
Thank you. I would like to move that we suspend the rules and proceed immediately to a vote on all that is before the House. Thank you.
Okay. The rules do not have to be suspended. You just have to move the previous question.
Rule number 7 doesn't.
I would move this previous question.
All right.
Thank you.
So the previous question has been moved. It would takes 2/3. It takes 2/3 vote. It's not debatable. And so if you would get your voting device ready, this is to move to the question.
They're ready.
And if you would support the move to the question, you would say yes or press 1. I see cards, and you have to register.
Point of order, you need to recognize it, Mike 3.
And we do have a point of order.
We're going to make the point there haven't been 2 speeches, and we're going to tell them that Rule 7 doesn't apply in the committee.
Right. And
so
let's see.
Recognize Fred Brewington.
Okay. Fred, let's see, where's he at? I don't see him in here.
Point of order, well, there's 2 of them.
Point of order, okay. Okay. And where's Fred at? Okay. I see just Ian. Is that the one? I don't see him. Oh, I see. Okay. Fred Brewington, if you'll go to microphone number 3 for your point of order, please state the rule and why you think it's being violated.
Bishop Fred Brewington, New York Annual Conference. I'm addressing the rule that particularly deals with our need to have a minimum of 2 before the actual question is put to a vote. And my question is whether or not that motion was in order and whether or not we did indeed have 2 speeches in favor and 2 against, as is required by our rules.
You're referring to Rule 7, which is required in the plenary, but in the committee, that rule is exempt. And so we can proceed as we have, and it would be in order for us to proceed as we currently are.
Thank you for your ruling.
Thank you. All right. And so now we're in the midst of a vote.
The question is, are you ready to vote?
And are you ready to vote? It would take 2/3. Have your voting device. If you would support, that's not it. If you would support the move to the question, you vote yes, and if you do not support it, you vote no. Hold a minute, it appears. Okay, you may vote now. Ian Urala?
Yeah, but it's not in order for
Right.
taking a vote on the previous question.
I see another point of order, which we'll get to after this vote has been received. And that's been deleted, so that point of order is.
Tell me when you're ready. You're ready.
All right, we're ready to receive the vote.
Voting is closed.
Poll is now closed. And you have adopted to move to the motion for the vote. So the motion before us is to adopt the 2 West Path petitions. And since we're ready to vote, if you would press 1, you're in favor of the motion. If you press 2, you are opposed. Please vote now. All right. Votes ready to show. So you have passed both petitions, 768, 94%, and to 44. Thank you. It's 4 to 6.
I don't think you want to get into that next item.
Okay.
It's too much.
I think so too. Let me test the body on this. We have the traditional plan that comes before us now if we're to take it. My concern about bringing this now is that it would make us very close to our adjournment time. It would be my suggestion that we adjourn now and take this first thing in the morning when we return so that we can deal with it in its entirety at that time. I'm suggesting that to the body, but I will let the body make the decision. So, if you take your voting device. I'm sorry, if you have a technical problem, you need to wave the flag there. And because I can't see everybody, I cannot recognize folks who are. And so there's a technical problem here, so please, we'll have someone come over to help you with that. Okay, yeah, you asked if the pool was open, and there's nothing before us, so there's no reason, we don't have a reason to have the pool open now. Okay, all right. So, well, we've got several people. Should I open the pool? Should we open the pool? Yeah. All right. I see a couple of people waving, so we'll open the pool and then we'll take the names as they appear in the pool. So please don't wave the cards. Just know that you can get our attention through the pool. All right. All right. I have Emily Allen. Microphone number 1.
Thank you. I have a point of information.
All right.
I have a question about tonight's meeting of the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters. I understand it is planned to be held in a room where only credentialed delegates have access. Under Section G of our Plan of Order, committee meetings should be open to all. Is there a way for observers to be given access to that meeting? Thank you.
Okay, we'll turn to the Secretary of the General Conference if he's here, or you can take that up with the Secretary of the General Conference because he would have the information on that to be able to respond to you. All right? Let's see what we got here. Jen Elo, microphone number 3. Please state the reason for your inquiry.
Jen Ilo, Baltimore, Washington. I have a point of information. My question is, what time do we plan to start in the morning?
All right. My understanding is our starting time is at 8:30 in the morning. Okay. Let's see. Lillian Gallo, microphone number 4. Please state the reason for your question or inquiry.
Lillian Gallo, Iowa Annual Conference. I would like to make a motion to adjourn the Legislative Committee.
Can she make a motion? Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Motion to adjourn is not debatable. If you would go to your voting device, if you would support the motion to adjourn, you would press 1. If you do not support that motion, press 2. Please vote now. To hold steady after we see the vote, because we have some announcements, some explanation. And so you have voted to adjourn. We have a vote for adjournment, so I'm not able to recognize anyone else, and you'd have to go into the pool in order for that to take place. I've asked our General Secretary to come to explain the question that was asked about the meeting of the Central Conference Commission.
The Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters will be meeting in rooms 142 and 143 tonight. It will be following adjournment. There will be limited seating for observers, and if perhaps we can work out some details, we're looking at the possibility of overflow. We cannot tell you that right now. We're working with the building staff, but there is an amount of limited seating for observers.
All right. We turn to our secretary for additional announcements.
Okay, we've got a number of announcements. First, we made a mistake. Sorry. 8 a.m. tomorrow is when worship begins, and 8:20 is when session will begin. Again, 8 a.m., be here for worship, and we will begin our legislative committee session promptly at 8:20. Let's see. Next, delegates and reserves, please bring your flight information with you tomorrow. The local hospitality team wants to finalize transportation arrangements to the airport for us. Next, everyone is invited to visit the prayer area located across from 134 and 135 on the concourse level. This space has prayer stations, a quiet area, and a labyrinth. Spiritual directors are available to meet with you anytime today, tomorrow, or Tuesday. The Committee on Credentials will meet following adjournment tonight in room 152. And as Gary already told you, the Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters will be meeting following adjournment in room 142 and 143. And that's it for announcements.
Well, I want to thank you for your patience with me. I didn't think I'd get elected and be right here this quickly, but we got through some items, and we'll get through everything tomorrow. Thank you so much for your kindness to one another. I pray that you leave, have a great meal tonight, and that you will know that God is with you as you leave, and He'll be here when you return. God bless you.
Don't leave now, 610 worship.
610. I'm sorry, we do have a 610 worship that we've been asked to, that we're going to participate in. So why don't we take a standing break, and then the worship team will come and... they're in place. Oh, they're in place now. So, but 610 is when they're starting, right? 610. But 610 is when we're starting. So if you have to take bathroom breaks and other things, please do that now. Thank you.